Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today is a special one. I've got myself a copy of the original English edition of Pierre Bartier and Guy Peellaert's The Adventures of Jodelle. I found out about this in the essays in the back of this new Fantagraphics book, Iris, a novel for viewers, and they kind of give some context about other works that were influencing this and other works that were influenced by this. And in the back, they mentioned this book and Pravda by Guy Peellaert, and I just thought they looked like really stunning books, and I wanted to get a hold of them. Fantagraphics did a reprint of this in 2013, I think, and I forget if they did Pravda. I couldn't find any of the reprints cheap online, and I couldn't find any of Pravda cheap, but I was able to find this. You can see it's not a perfect condition, but a pretty good copy of The Adventures of Jodelle. I think this was about 60, 70 bucks, so that seemed worth it to me. It was much cheaper than any other version of this. A lot of other people are selling for at least a couple $100. So pretty cool book. I'm just gonna, because it's something rare and out of print, I'm gonna go ahead and flip through the whole thing as I'm talking about it. But you can see that right out the gate, we're definitely dealing with a book. This was made in '66, published in English in '67. We're dealing with a book that's very, very of the times, with like the psychedelic poster art. We've got like this combination of the Yellow Submarine kind of vibes. You've got I'm gonna blank on the guy's name right now, the poster artist. But all of the poster art of that time, the kind of new Art Nouveau influenced stuff. Peter Max, that's the name I was looking for. I know there's a couple other artists working that style, but it's all coming together to make this graphic novel. And when we're talking about the history of comics, I can't think of something earlier than this. I mean, not that I'm any great historian, but the treatment of this, like, this is a big book. You can see it's, pretty much the length of my forearm. It's from side to side. It's a huge book. It's on very nice, very stiff paper. You can tell that the print job is like the highest quality print that you could probably get at the time. This is really a graphic novel intended to be in this form, treated as like an artist's book, treated as an art book in general. I can't think of anything else that would have been like this in the 60s. This is crazy to me. The fact that, I mean, I consider myself someone pretty well versed in comics. Like I said, not the biggest historian, but the big important stuff. Like, I thought I've heard of all this. I thought I've read most of it. I've spent my whole life reading comics and learning about them. Never heard of this before, and it's a stunning object. And there's something about holding this actual object that existed in 1967, that this is the object. Usually I don't really care about that. It's like, if I can get a good reprint, I'm happy. But this is such a nice quality print it seems to be such a unique and special object that, like, holding the actual object, like someone who's used to floppy comics picking this up and having their mind blown, I can get closer to that experience by holding the original thing. So that's the first time I've ever kind of had that experience with the object, and I kind of get the collector mentality a little bit more now. The art, as you can see, is totally stunning. Before I pass by it, I really love the composition of this panel here, particularly the way that Guy Peellaert is representing the reflection in the water. You can tell by looking at the art that at first it can seem like a panel like this seems pretty simple, pretty stripped down, but really there's so much detail all throughout, kind of a surprising amount of detail, almost to the point where, like, yeah, you're startled by it. Like, you don't think you're going to see as much, and then you can go back into the details of the panels and find these characters doing funny things and find little signs. And yeah, it's just a real pleasure to look at. Obviously the coloration is really awesome. Great print job. The story's a little bit silly. We've got, like, set in, I think it's 14 AD is where it starts at. This is like some alternate fantasy. Yeah, 14 AD. There's some kind of Roman capitalist like society where you've got all this product placement and things. So, like, very, very pop art, but applied to Roman, imagining, I don't know, that they had like a contemporary American society, but then you still get all the soldiers and things. I don't know exactly. It's a little bit psychedelic, like erotic spy fantasy type of story, but the Jodelle character seems to have been like a brainwashed sleeper agent, doesn't remember who she is, and she's gets put into this organization to upset it and stop someone from assassinating someone or something like that. It's kind of surreal, and it moves from one thing to the other. It's a fun story. But really, yeah, it's the presentation of the book. It's the design of it. It's the treatment of it as, like, something worthy of an artist's edition, high quality print, a big book, that makes this really special. And then, yeah, you can just tell by looking at the art in here. It's just fantastic to look at as well. Another thing that's interesting about this is, like, it does have these really intense saturated colors, but they're not on like glossy paper, so they're toned down a little bit. Even the yellow's not like completely eye searing. But this is a good example of someone who's intentionally using saturated colors, pure intense colors, to create a look, versus a lot of like the Marvel reprints now, where they're taking stuff that were originally printed on newsprint and printing them, on nice clean white paper with no desaturation, and it looks like shit. This is a book where this is what it's supposed to look like, and the artist is making those choices as they go, knowing what the final product's going to look like, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, that, like, the yellow on here, this is so amazing. This almost looks like Michael DeForge level cartooning here, and with the strange yellows and blacks and color palette. This must have been an immensely influential book to anyone who got it at the time. I can't imagine it not being. This is like the best argument I can think of out of any comics at the time for treating them like a really, really precious thing. And yeah, it's very, very cool like that. I don't know that I really have much else to say, but I just want to make sure that we flip through and people can see everything that's in here. Strange character with one arm there. Really cool library with the spinner rack. This is what I hope my house looks like. Libraries on the wall and then spinner rack with comics on the side. Yeah, this looks awesome. I don't know if I want that many brightly colored books in my library. A door like that would be nice. And the erotica in it, you can see there is erotica, but it's pretty mild. It's not like it's not like a Guido Crepa book or something. I wish I could get a hold of Pravda. Pravda looks like it has some really interesting color, like op art tricks in it, but those were all expensive. I saw an article saying that Fantagraphics got the rights to both of them, but I don't think I ever saw Fantagraphics reprinting one, or if they did, it was equally expensive to this. So I'm going to keep my eyes out to see if I can find like a used original Pravda, mentioning Playboy here. Got some vampirism. This is actually, from a print standpoint, pretty cool. Printing this really, really dark bluish color over the yellow. Makes a real nice effect there. It's actually so much ink got put down, it made the paper buckle a little, which is kind of strange. So that's the Adventures of Jodelle. Like I said, the story is just kind of a silly. It's almost like Austin Powers, like type of spy story, but without the humor. It's just silly, surrealist spy story. But as an object, as a visual, just something that causes pure visual delight, and as something that seems like wildly important to me in the history of comics, and something I wish I'd heard about sooner. I'm very, very excited that I was able to find a copy of this book, and definitely anyone who's looking for a copy like look around online. If you can get one that maybe like this, the cover's a little beat up, but everything else is pretty good, it's totally worth it. This is a really, really special object in the history of comics, I think. The Exile by Eric Creek is a gorgeously illustrated Viking saga of revenge. Eric Creek calls it his Viking Western. It's about a guy who's been away on the warpath and is returning home to some family troubles that have to be resolved. And this is told in just this amazing, like, kind of three-color art style that looks like old woodblock cuts or something. It's absolutely gorgeous book that you've got to pick up.